Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great day. So, I just got finished looking at the big reveals at today's adepticon, and well, guess what? Spoiler alert! It looks like Age of Sigmar 4th Edition is inbound, but I don't think that's really that big of a surprise to anyone. It was pretty much been foreshadowed and leaked for like months now, so we're kind of just seeing the inevitable. So I just want to go over some of the big things I got from it and what I think this means for the future. So the era of the beast is dead. Long live the era of ruin. So yeah, again, the cat's out of the bag here. 4th edition is going to be inbound this summer, and honestly, I'm perfectly okay with that. I kind of feel, that overall, I kind of feel the era of the beast or the 3rd edition of Age of Sigmar definitely had some good things going for it, but I also feel that they kind of, I don't know, maybe dropped the ball in some areas of the game. I'm not going to cover those here. I think I'll probably do a retrospective video on 3rd edition, just giving my honest thoughts and opinions now that we know it's ending. But pretty much for just to summarize what we got is this is going to be a major rework of the game, like big one, like the biggest we've ever got, probably since the change. This is the biggest change up since from Old World to Age of Sigmar. Oh, and also big shocker, Chaos is the big bad this time. We all already saw that. Like people had basically pointed out that 1st edition was all about order, 2nd edition was all about death, 3rd edition was all about destruction. It was now Chaos's turn. However, I'm a little bit surprised that it's actually going to be spearheaded by the Skaven of all things. Like I had completely been convinced that it was going to be about the Slaves to Darkness, what with them getting all those new models for the Dark Oath. So I was a little bit surprised they weren't going to be the poster boys, but no, the Skaven are actually spearheading the new era with probably the biggest invasion they've ever done in the Age of Sigmar. Like we're talking rats by the billions. We're talking about Skaven Blight City literally being thrust into the realm of fire and now is taking up literally pretty much a whole continent-sized chunk of land now belongs to the Skaven, and they're just running rampant right here. Like for all those who probably may have complained that the Skaven didn't really seem to do enough in the previous editions, well, that's obviously changing. Now, just so basically from what I got, we didn't really get a ton of information, but at the same time, we also got quite a few spoilers. So, biggest thing I got from this is going to be the biggest rewrite of Age of Sigmar since the 1st edition. And honestly, I kind of saw this coming. Like, one of the biggest things I heard people talking about Age of Sigmar 3rd edition is that the game had just become too bloated in some respects. Now, I don't always agree with this because, like, for example, at its worst, 3rd edition Age of Sigmar was nowhere near what, let's say, like 40K did at the worst of like its 7th edition or its 9th edition, which was almost unplayable in some capacities. But however, I do agree in some respects, though, that the whole appeal of Age of Sigmar being simple but complex at the same time was kind of being kind of eroded by the fact that we were just getting rules on top of rules on top of rules. I think there definitely was a point where, yes, they couldn't really put any more complexity onto what was already there and still keep to that original mission statement. Like 3rd edition was probably at the max it could probably go. So yes, they did probably have to bring it down a little. So in this regard, they're reworking it from the ground up for more simplicity. And a lot of people will point out is, yes, this is very similar to what they did with 10th edition. They basically just took what was there, they scaled it all the way back, and they just basically made it. They just put a lot more thought into like things like universal special rules, simplifying phases, get more ideas for interactivity. Like that's what they're kind of going for, and they kind of phrase it as modularity. I can't say the word. But anyway, that word and depth were emphasized a lot. I think I understand what they're going for. For example, in 40K, now just as an amendment to this, they're probably not going to do what they did in 40K, because I feel 40K I think went a little bit too simplistic, and I don't think Age of Sigmar will. But the whole idea of, like, it was more about the overall army variety rather than individual units having a high amount of customizability. So I think what they're probably going to do is there's going to be a lot more emphasis on, like, sub-factions for armies overall rather than a ton of ways to customize individual units. And I think Age of Sigmar will go into that very well, because unlike 40K, Age of Sigmar was always like that. So I think what they're going to do is they're going to keep with they're going to keep with that, but just streamline the rules and cut some of the bloat that developed over the years. But still keeping high tactical depths. And a big thing that I was really pointing out is there's going to be greater interactivity with turns. And I mentioned this before, 3rd edition was definitely on the right track with interactivity. There was stuff you can do in your opponent's turn, like rally, there was redeploy, there was unleash hell, but they just never really quite went far enough. Like, they were there, but just not quite enough. Like, they needed a little more, like I said, they needed to give more incentive, not to just make the double turn the obvious take, and they had to allow people to have something to do instead of just, as I mentioned before, just sitting around waiting for your opponent to finish. So that, I think, is really good, and it also bears repeating, the double turn is staying. Sorry, double turn taters, it's still here. But I think one thing that I really liked from the discussion is they really did take, at least it felt like to me, that they really took people's feedback into account. Like, the double turn has been like a sticking point since the dawn of Age of Sigmar, and I really feel with each edition they legitimately tried to mitigate it and figure out ways to work with it. 3rd edition was probably the closest they had gotten so far, and I feel like with a complete rewrite from the ground up, I think is really going to work. Because here's the thing, reason I think the double turn has been so controversial is because when Age of Sigmar was created in its 1st edition, they didn't really put a lot of thought into things like competitiveness, balance. They were really just throwing rules out just to make them as simple as possible and just, hey, have fun. Randomness is fun. Let's just make every turn random. And I think when they realized people didn't really want just no proper structure, they really did want an actual game that allowed tactical depth. They were kind of in a pickle. Okay, they basically had the game revolve around a random turn mechanic, but they had to now find a way to balance that. And so they basically spent the next 2 editions figuring out how to make that double turn or random turn or whatever you wanted to call it, work, but allow for it to exist, but also not just make every game dependent on a die roll. And I think what another problem with that is that from the 1st edition to the 3rd edition, they were just building on the rules that already existed. So you had the 1st edition, which got its General's Handbook, which then evolved into 2nd edition, and then the changes made on 2nd edition were then further refined into 3rd. But again, I think they basically found is that the double turn they couldn't balance it with the rules direction they were going in. So now they're starting from scratch again. Basically, we're going back to the basics and building it up from the ground up with a double turn in mind. I think that was probably the only way they were going to do it. So I'm bittersweet on this, because on the one hand, I actually did like a lot of aspects of 3rd edition, but I also concede there was probably no way they could really get to this level of interactivity without actually just basically going back to the basics. So it is what it is. So, what are some things I really liked about this? Well, one thing that I was definitely hoping for, and it did happen, spell tables, sub-factions, battle traits, all that good stuff. Oh, enhancements, can't forget enhancements. They're all going to stay. So that's good. So a big thing I heard people wondering was, are they going to go the 40K route where spells just become attached to the war scrolls? Well, no. There will be spell tables, there will be enhancements, there will be battle traits. Those are all staying. So this is something that leads me to believe is they're not quite going to the level that 40K did, where they basically just took almost all the army rules and just put them in like the individual unit sheets. In fact, it actually seems to be they're kind of going the opposite, like at least from how I interpreted it, in that, see, with 40K, a lot of the the variety and the customization of individual armies, it was all about like it was put into things like sub factions, like you put them in the detachments to determine your customizability and where your heroes are placed. With Age of Sigmar, they don't seem to be going to that extent. They seem to be still having a lot of customization in the battle traits and in the tables and enhancements. And also, I'm a little bit surprised they didn't really mention what was going on with heroes. The only thing, the biggest thing I got from it was that they were basically getting rid of ranges in general. Like, basically everything, like, with hero interaction with units and when hitting into combat, it all works on 3 inches. So there's no weapon ranges anymore. It's 3-inch range. And hero interactions with units apparently works in 3-inch range as well. So I think I understand what they're going for with that, but I need a little bit them to go a little bit more into detail. Also, as I just mentioned, they're actively finally addressing the double turn concerns. And what I mean by that is I kind of feel that between first and second, and especially so with between second and third, I think while they say they were listening to player feedback, I feel like they weren't listening to the extent they could have. And by that is that a lot of the problems that people were addressing about the double turn in second edition, in that it made shooting too good, it benefited fast moving armies way too much. It led to like magic heavy armies just like spamming mortal wounds out the out the yin yang here. And the thing is, these were all brought up pretty early, even in second edition. But then when third edition rolled in, I kind of felt like they really didn't address a lot of these concerns. Like they were going in the right direction, with like stuff you can do in your opponent's turn, but nothing really addressed those key issues. Like with shooting, they didn't really do anything with cover to address being shot at twice in a row. They didn't really do anything to, mitigate cavalry just running around you all the time. They didn't really do anything to mitigate, Sons of Bahamut just running up, smashing you, then going double turns, smashing you again, and then camping objectives for 2 turns, So I feel like they did what they had, the only real thing they could have, and that was they had to just redo the game from scratch, as they've kind of mentioned. They've just gone back to the foundations of the game and then built it back up from there. That ultimately, I think, was the only way to address the double turn, and I think that's what they're doing. And one of the ways they're doing that is with more interactivity in both turns. And again, third edition, good. I'm going to give A for effort, but I'm going to give probably a B minus C plus for actual results. Like I feel they did they were in the right direction, and they definitely helped mitigate some of the double turn. But on the other hand, I feel like there were just too many scenarios where they just didn't quite do enough. Like, for example, just throwing out a rally or a random distance redeploy just really didn't mitigate a bad double turn as much as it could have. But so now they're saying there's going to be even more ways for interactivity during the turns, and on top of that, they're going to be making changes to scoring to make less incentives to just want to always go twice. So those are 2 things that actually, in my opinion, prove they're listening to the fan base, because that's things people have been saying for years now about Age of Sigmar. Just like for things like, well, make scoring happen at the end of the battle round, or put more reactions in your opponent's turn, so you're not just getting shot off the board all the time. So that's a really good thing. A big thing I was actually not expecting, but I'm actually glad it happened. They made a big reference to about the lore of the backgrounds of the mortal realms affecting the battle. See, this is something that was big in second edition, where you had like these tables where could depending on the realm you were could influence the battle. People might also remember that you actually had to choose where your army was from. So let's say, okay, I had an ogre Gurmagh tribe's army, but from Shyish, and that allowed you to, that gave you access to, like, you know, specific tables for, like, getting artifacts and spells and stuff from that Pacific realm. You know, just ways to, like, you know, customize your army. But then 3rd edition rolled around, and they basically just got rid of all of that. It just made everything super basic. You know, there was no more rules interaction with what realm you were playing in. There was no, like, special things on the battlefield depending on the realm you were in. It was basically just like washed away. Like, so it's kind of weird in some ways. So 3rd edition was both more complex than 2nd edition, but in some ways, at least from a lore perspective, it was actually dumbed down. So I'm actually really glad they're bringing the background lore back onto the tabletop. And just for the record, too, I just want to reiterate, I don't feel this is going to be to the level of 40k change-up. They've already said they're bringing in universal special rules to take some of the weight off the war scrolls for special rules, same as 40k. But again, I just have, from just the way they're wording things and the way they're going about things, I don't feel it's going to be to the same level as 40k did. I will say, though, they are giving, just for those wondering, yes, it is going to be a major change up, but there's going to be free rules for everyone. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm sorry everyone, we're going back to indexes, but at least they're going to be free. So if your books will become obsolete come the new edition, but you'll get a free index, you'll get free war scrolls, you'll be able to play your army from scratch. So I'm actually almost a little bit, I'm also a little bit unsure how I feel about that too. Now, on the one hand, I like that they're making it free. On the other hand, like, I guess that one guy who spent like $60 or $70 or whatever, or pounds or whatever, getting the newest battle tome. Well, I hope you enjoy it, because you're only going to be able to use it for probably a couple months, and you're just going to get it, and the guy who waited can now just download a free index. So, yay. Probably I kind of already just said it, but I'll just say it again. I don't like, I never like the idea of books getting discontinued so early. Like, case in point, we got like, the guy who spent like a bunch of money on the cities of Sigmar, and the cities of Sigmar, etc. Now that book's basically only good for artwork and lore now. It's enjoy it while it lasts. And another thing with books getting discontinued, as much as I don't think it's going to go to the level that 40k did, it really does feel, it really is, in a lot of ways, it is the 10th edition 40k treatment. Like, we're getting, like, the war scrolls are getting redone from scratch. Universal special rules are going to play a much bigger role. Indexes are in, at least for the foreseeable future. And to be perfectly honest, like, I know this is going to miff a lot of people, because it miffed a lot of people in 40k, and there's just no way it's not going to miff a lot of people in Age of Sigmar as well. Like, we're going to be getting, like, especially because, as they've mentioned, they're going to be redoing the armies from the ground up as well. So in what way is that going to affect the army you're playing? Like, are some units just become useless again? Are the changes going to completely change up your play style? Because the thing is, a big thing about 3rd edition is individual armies, like, their battle traits started to become very complex. Like, don't even get me started on some armies like the Cities of Sigmar, the Disciples of Tzeentch, or heck, even the new Flesh Eater Courts. Who, by the way, sorry guys, your book's not going to last too long. There's nothing that can be done, I guess, but. I'm just kind of, because the thing is, a big thing with having the 10th edition is they really simplified how the battle traits work. So I'm kind of wondering how that's going to translate with the Age of Sigmar armies. And a big thing is, very similar to 40k, it's going to be years before they update every army. So there's going to be many Age of Sigmar armies that are just going to have to deal with just using the index for the foreseeable future. Now, I think in terms of content, they're probably going to be similar to the amendment rules that we've gotten recently. For example, we had basically a battle tome supplement for the Iron Jaws and a more recent one for the Dark Oath that are relatively quite good and detailed for what they are. My honest opinion is that they're probably similar to what the indexes are going to be. It's just going to be in terms of like size and complexity. And this isn't going to please everyone, and we're just gonna have to see how the community takes it. Now, and also, I'm still unsure what the level of the changeup is going to be. Well, I don't think it's going to be the level of 10th edition. I do feel that it might. I'm just worried that they're going to simplify things too much because. Because until the battle tomes are coming, I just don't know how the indexes are going to be like, and I don't know how the rules are going to end up being, and it's probably going to be a whole new learning curve. Like, the people who spent like 3 years teaching themselves Age of Sigmar, well, guess what? Now we're back to scratch. Now we got to memorize universal special rules. Now we have to figure out, reactions in each other's turns. Now we have to figure out, like, how are we supposed to make these indexes work, Now I have to relearn how to read war scrolls, It's just basically, we're basically almost like going back to the first edition in a lot of ways. And another thing is, they made a big point about this whole idea of spearhead. Like, just basically, you can just use the stuff right out of the box. Like, the cards for the units are all there. The rules will be all there. You can just play a game just with the units in the box. Again, similar to what they've tried in the past with 40K. And they even kind of did a similar thing at the beginning of 3rd edition. I forget off the top of my head now, but it was like a way to play the game at like a smaller point level. And the problem I have with this is that a lot of times this just ends up being like a flavor of the month. Like, they say, oh, you want to play the game, but you only have the starter box. Well, don't worry, just play these special spearhead rules. But then what ends up happening is eventually, once the indexes are out and people just start adapting their armies, they just want to use their whole armies, and pretty soon nobody's using them. Like, I just wonder if that's going to happen to Spearhead. Like, what I'm trying to say is, will Spearhead actually catch on? Because every time GW seems to do, like, these simplified takes on the base game, they usually just die on the vine. Like, because a lot of people make some good points. Like, why would I need Spearhead? We already have a smaller form game, like, with things like Underworld and Warcry. And obviously, I get it. Like, obviously, that's not... It's kind of an apples to oranges thing, because Warcry is obviously a different gaming system. But... I'm just wondering how they thought about going about Spearhead to mitigate this, so it doesn't just end up being like we talk about it for a month and then no one ever brings it up again. Just something I'm curious about. So my final thoughts. Overall, I think everything's looking pretty good here. Like, we didn't get a ton of information, but the stuff they did share, it really touched on the basic issues people have had with Age of Sigmar. It really showed that they're actually starting to listen to the community. They are finally, hopefully, addressing the issues people have with the random turn mechanic. They're finally addressing some of the issues people seem to have with scoring, about gradual rules bloat, like increasing complexity with long war scrolls. That all seems to be happening too. And also, one big thing I probably forgot to mention earlier, people's complaints about, the Skaven, even though they're one of the most popular factions, in the background and in the updates, we really haven't seen them do a lot. Well, I'm really glad they're finally being chosen as the big bads, finally. Because here's the thing, they're kind of a bit of a joke faction, but people kind of forget how big of a deal they can really be, Like, they literally gave an explanation where literally, like, a continent-sized city came up in Akshi, and there are billions of Skaven attacking the realms. Okay, that's billions with a B. So this is they are when put into the proper order, Skaven are a big deal. So I'm really liking this, and also glad we're finally getting the Ruination Chambers. Like, I've been calling this for years. Like, I'm actually a little bit surprised we didn't get Ruination Chamber in 3rd edition for the Era of the Beast. Just actually, now thinking back, we never really did. We technically didn't get a new chamber. It was just additions to the Warrior Chamber, I think. Huh. How about that? Well, anyway, yeah, like obviously the Stormcast are going to remain the poster child, but I wonder how this new chamber is going to change up the meta. Like the idea of Stormcasts that are just like literally just on the brink of losing whatever it is that makes them them. You know, that's an interesting thought to think about. So anyway, I'm really looking forward to more reveals in the future. It's going to be coming out this summer, so we still have, if you're enjoying third edition, best get in your games while you can, because this third edition is on life support as is, and we're about to pull the plug. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and have a good day. Cheers.